Hello and welcome to the Asian game here at the FIFA Women's World Cup. Again, all of our coverage is sponsored by our good friends at SMC, and we thank them very much for their support throughout this tournament. It's been a big day here at the FIFA Women's World Cup. We've just seen America get knocked out. The defending champions are out of the tournament. Sweden are through to the quarterfinal to face Japan. Dramatic finish in that one over there in Melbourne. One of the most dramatic penalty shootouts I think you're ever likely to see. 4 straight penalty misses, swayed either way. Looked like Sweden were going to win, then America was going to win, then Sweden was going to win. Absolutely remarkable finish to that one. Don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. It was a goal line technology decision in the end after America thought they'd saved a penalty. It had in fact crossed the line by the smallest of margins, and Sweden are through to face Japan in the quarterfinal. That will be played in Auckland on Friday afternoon at Eden Park, or Friday evening it is in Auckland, 7:30pm kickoff local time, I think it is. So Japan versus Sweden. Now Sweden now face the long trip back, 4 or 5 hour flight from Melbourne back to Auckland. They've had to play the 120 minutes and the physical and emotional toll of that penalty shootout as well. So they've only got they've got one less day than Japan to recover from that, plus the lengthy international flight thrown in there as well. So at this stage, I'd say that favours Japan, particularly given the form line coming into that game. But as Sweden showed tonight, they've got plenty of guts, plenty of resilience, and you can never count them out in that one. So that will be a huge clash later this week. And of course, Australia's big game tomorrow in Sydney at Stadium Australia against Denmark. Massive occasion. Australia go into that one as red hot favourites. Of course, all the speculation is still as to whether Sam Kerr will play. She's put her hand up and she said she will play. What role that is, I've got no doubt that if she is to see minutes, it will be off the bench. She didn't partake in Australian training earlier today, I think it was. She was sidelined. I think she was just on the bike. Media were kicked out after the first 15 minutes, but a helicopter was hovering overhead, which annoyed Tony Gustafsson a little bit, but it shows the interest levels that there are as every media outlet tries to find every last skerrick of information that they possibly can ahead of that huge game there tomorrow. As I said, we'll said on last night's show that we're hoping to give you a full preview of that one tonight. That's not going to be the case. Hopefully had a couple of guests lined up that just fell through at the last minute, but never mind. Earlier in the week, I had the great pleasure of speaking to the captain of the Pakistan women's national team, Maria Khan, American-born Pakistani. She now plays her club football over in the UAE, where she's lived now for a number of years, represents Pakistan, whose women's football program has just been relaunched in the last couple of years. And a couple of nights ago, I had the great pleasure of speaking to her in depth about her own journey from being born in Denver all the way through to captaining the country of her parents and finding her own identity along the way as well. So here is my chat with Maria Khan. Well, Maria, thanks very much for joining us here on the Asian Game. It's a pleasure to have you on the show with us this evening. I want to start with a nice, easy one, an introductory one, if we will. Born in Denver, as people will quickly pick up as they hear you talk. How was it that you fell in love with the game of football to begin with?
Yeah, so having been born in the U.S., for young girls, soccer, as we called it. I no longer call it that, but football was really popular, right? It was always around in schools and, the after school activities that you play, etc. But I really remember my first fond memory of football was at lunchtime at recess, the break that you get for about 30 minutes, and just running around playing with the boys, kicking the ball around during lunchtime when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, just playing on the playground, hitting the ball against a wooden wall as the goal. I think for me, that was, where I really just kind of fell in love with the sport, was on the playground, playing with my classmates. And then I just remember going home to my parents and saying, my South Asian parents, Pakistani, first generation, actually immigrant parents, saying, hey, I want to play soccer. I want to play football. So you can only imagine their look. But yeah, I think it all started back on the playground for sure.
And how did that conversation go with your parents?
It was oh, that's cute. But I think once I started pestering them and really showing that I was serious and adamant and, really persistent about wanting to play and give it a try. Actually, that next week, I think my mom like came home and was like, all right, well, we found you a local team. Get your stuff, let's go. And the first team that I ever played for was called the Tweety Birds.
Oh, what a team!
Yeah, we wore yellow socks to represent Tweety Bird, and that was at the age of, I think, 6 or 7.
And now fast forwarding a lot, and we'll come back a little bit. But fast forwarding to now, captain of Pakistan. How do your parents feel now, and how proud are they of you and the journey that you've taken now that you've reached this point in your career?
Oh man, it's, the comment of when are you going to be done playing football has definitely stopped. I think they've realized kind of just the platform it's given me, the experiences it's given me, and I think most importantly, I think they've just seen like what it means to me, to be able to represent their country, right? And a country that, growing up, I might have thought of differently when I traveled there when we were younger, right? So my perception of Pakistan and, my background and my roots has completely changed and turned from what I thought it was. Right now I have the luxury and the privilege and the honor to travel back and forth to Pakistan, to spend time in Pakistan, and really get to understand it. And I think that for me is probably one of the things that I will be most grateful for, and having the opportunity to play international football is really getting to better understand my parents and my family, and also even better understand myself, because of the time that I get to spend in a country where there's so many roots.
Um, the story of the children of migrants is a very interesting one. We see it a lot here in Australia as well. When you've got two parents born overseas, in the schoolyard, you're almost cast off as the foreign child, so to speak, because your parents are overseas. So you're almost viewed as the foreign one in the playground. And how did you grapple with that personally as well, because you're born and growing up in America, you're trying to be American. That's what but at home it's very different as well. So that whole sort of dichotomy of trying to grapple with your identity and all of that. How did you deal with that growing up?
Yeah, I'll be honest, like it was, everyone thinks like, oh, you grew up in America, you had it good and all this stuff. And it's like, to be honest, yes, I had resources. Yes, I had opportunities. I had a pathway, right? Like I had a pathway I could choose from, but it wasn't as easy as, one might think, right? Because you grow up in your house, there's one culture, right? And there's one, way of things that are done and the way things are done. And then the second you step outside of that door of your house, it's a completely different world, right? Than what you're being taught at home. And, for me, it was, I felt growing up, I had to be one way at home, a more softer spoken, didn't question things. And then the second I stepped outside, it's like I was this rebel, because it's like, I don't have to be how I am at home, right? Because I get to be more outgoing. I get to be, I get to challenge things. I get to, question things. I get to, do things that I wouldn't necessarily be allowed to do at home. So it was, there was definitely a little bit of, finding, an identity. And especially like with football at the time, back in the day, it was a predominantly white sport that was not very accessible to minorities, because in the US, the system is you play for a club or an academy and your parents have to pay a pretty penny for you to be able to, participate in these clubs or in these academies, especially when you're in a competitive team and you're traveling, and looking to get recognized by university scouts or college scouts. So, it was a difficult journey. I guess I didn't realize the kind of symbolic meaning that it had then like I understand it now, and kind of the challenges that I did face. But the good thing is that my family eventually came around. Especially that really changed when I got scholarship offers to play in university, at the Division 1 level, right? So I had a handful of Division 1 schools that had offered me opportunities to play there. So I think once my parents saw that, they could save on college tuition, they're like, "Yeah, go for it. Great job. Well done." But no, it was, listen, like, and like I said, because I've been fortunate enough to live, in Asia for the past 10 years, going on 11 years, and really be exposed to the culture, and different Middle Eastern cultures, here, different South Asian cultures. It's really helped me understand that, listen, my parents weren't just tough parents, right? It's what they grew up knowing, right? And so when you take immigrant parents and you put them in an environment that is completely foreign to them as well, they have to adapt and they have to change their way as well. And then and couple that with, raising a first generation Pakistani American, it's not easy at all. So yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster, but I think now, because I have had the opportunity to, represent Pakistan and be involved, in a different capacity in football, it's really helped me kind of understand my childhood and what I experienced a lot better, for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned you've been living in Asia 10 or 11 years now. So talk to us a little bit about that journey towards representing Pakistan, when it first came on the horizon for you, and the whole journey and process of how that came about to the point where you decided to actually go through and decided to represent Pakistan at national team level.
Yeah, so it's actually been an interesting one, because living in the US all the way up until 2013, I had no idea that there was any football activity happening at all in Pakistan, for both men or women. No idea. And then when I moved over to the UAE, to get my master's degree, again, somebody sent me like a screenshot of a tweet talking about women's football in Pakistan. And then that's when, luckily Google search engines were a thing. So I was able to, go online and do some research and see what was happening. And that was in about 2014, 2015, roughly. But at that time, there was a ban on international football by FIFA, against Pakistan. So they weren't currently active. But it was just nice to know that, wow, okay, there's stuff happening. Then you fast forward maybe 2017. So things died down. I was like, okay, great. It's good to know that it exists. Best of luck, right? Whatever's happening, best of luck. Um, and then in about, I think it was 2017, a couple of players from Pakistan had actually come over to the UAE to play in our women's league that we had here. And then obviously the women's football community in the UAE, being as small as it is, everyone knows everybody. And then you come and say, "Oh, you're Pakistani. Oh, I'm Pakistani," and then you just get talking, right? And so started talking, and then those players went back, to Pakistan. And then in 2018, every year Pakistan has what is called, a national women's championship, and it's basically a tournament where all the teams, both, what are called department teams, which are government owned teams, as well as private teams, get together to compete in a national tournament. So I was invited in 2018 by this team called Royal Eagles, who asked me to come over. Being a Pakistani origin player, I was eligible to compete in the tournament. And so, yeah, competed in the tournament, completely like changed. As cliche, it sounds really cliche, but it really did change my life, especially because I was exposed to a different side of Pakistan that I hadn't known growing up, right? So every time I traveled to Pakistan, we would go straight from the airport to the village where, my father and my mother's families were, and we stayed there for the month and didn't venture out, didn't travel to other parts of Pakistan, etc. So for me to go to a place where I already had my opinion of it, and that opinion to be completely changed after 2 weeks, when you go and you see, first of all, a sport you love being played by over 200 young girls and women that you had no idea existed. And, for me, again, yes, it was raw. Yes, it could have been run better. Yes, it could have been advertised. There's so many things that could have been done better. But for me, it was just the fact that you saw those women and those girls out there wanting to be out there competing, and competing at a very, very decent to high level. It was an amazing experience. And then from then, I was like, I don't care how I'm involved. I don't care if I'm playing, if I'm not playing. Like, I just want to be involved in whatever capacity I can, because I see the potential here. I see the talent here. I see, these girls really just wanting to play. And I think that's where it starts, right? And again, fast forwarding another couple of years, you get the ban lifted. And then you get, a small camp that happens where, I got called up. It was like a week-long camp. And then another ban happens again for a short period of time. And then as of last year, I think it was June or July of 2022, that the ban actually got lifted, and the normalization committee appointed to be able to kind of help run things and get things back in order. So with all that happening, we returned after 8 years of a FIFA ban for the South Asian Games of Q4. I think it was October or something of last year, September, October of last year, where, we returned for the first time in 8 years. So it was, and then, been kind of slowly progressing in the right direction ever since.
Yeah, I mean, things certainly seem to be heading in an upward trajectory. That's certainly the case. I remember a couple of years ago, 2019, I think it was, I spoke with Hajra Khan, who was was the former captain of Pakistan. I think she was. And as I said, we spoke in 2019 before the last Women's World Cup. And we spoke a lot about the challenges and difficulties in trying to get women's football developed. I think at that point the FIFA ban might have still been in place, or had just come off. I think it was still in place, but that effectively been prevented as well from going to the South Asian Championships, and they just faced constant roadblocks whenever they tried to get women's football development heading in the right direction. So with all of those struggles, how difficult has it been to get progress and to get development in women's football in Pakistan over the last few years? And given all those struggles and what you've seen, how much potential do you see if things do continue in this upward trajectory that it seems to be on? How much potential do you see in Pakistan for women's football?
Yeah, I think, listen, it's so unfortunate that a lot of players kind of missed out on their peak years of performance, right? Due to not having any international games or international opportunities, let alone domestic opportunities, right? So when you think about it, when you think, like, no system is going to be set up for success when you have one national tournament a year, right? And in the meantime, players are playing, athletes are playing 7-a-side, 5-a-side futsal, right? Not in a competitive environment, not in a safe environment. So for the players in Pakistan, yeah, they, both men and women, right? Not just men, or not just women. Sorry, they really have struggled, and the country really has struggled. And it's unfortunate, because you have the fifth largest country in the world with a population over 200 million. Your talent pool automatically is so big, right? Like, you would think people would, see that opportunity and want to help grow it and develop that talent pool. But again, what has happened, right? We can't change that. We can't control that. do we, sympathize with, players that got left out during that time, and, the opportunities that they missed out on? 100%. Fast forward to now, there still are challenges, right? And there's going to be challenges, and there's going to be, hard times, because it's a new federation, it's a new team, we're figuring it out. Right? And anytime you're trying to figure something out and you're new to it for the first time, you're going to get a lot of criticism, you're going to get a lot of, feedback. But what I appreciate is that there is that eagerness to want to get better, both as a federation and as national teams. And this is something where, it's really nice, because before, you necessarily couldn't hold players accountable or athletes accountable for being in shape, or, looking to be, top performers, because they had nothing to compete for. Right? There was nothing happening. But now that we do have a little bit of consistency, I won't say sustainability yet, because, sustainability is, that's a far, word right now. But, the fact that we do have a little bit of consistency, we're at that stage now where we can hold athletes accountable. Right? Are you now training in the off season? Are you now making sure that, you are focusing on, your training, your technical, your tactical, your physical, your mental? Right? Are these things, like, we can now start to bring a certain level of performance culture into our federation and into our team? And you know what? Every time we're getting better. Are we going to, be qualifying for World Cups and all this stuff? And no, right? We have to start small. And that starts with investing into a sustainable ecosystem where players within the country and players that are living there, both men and women, are getting access to high level football on a regular basis. And 11-a-side football. Yeah, futsal's great, and there's definitely a niche for it. But if we're talking, the world game, it's 11-a-side football. And we really, like, as a federation, they know it, right? We don't need to keep reiterating it to them. They know what needs to happen. And it's something that, again, it will take time. They're going to mess up. We're going to mess up. But we have to be able to be patient and be willing to figure it out and get better together.
Whenever people think of Pakistan, the view is that it is a cricket nation, and it's true, it is a cricket mad nation. But you look at the popularity for football there, and it is immense. It's kind of hidden away a little bit because Pakistan hasn't really achieved anything of sort of global significance, even within Asia, really. So how much potential do you see, given, as I said, the perception that it is a cricket nation? How much potential do you see for football in the country, particularly women's football, given the popularity and support that it actually has within the country?
I'm telling you, like, I've played football at the highest level in 3 different countries, right? In the US, played D1. In the UAE, I've been involved with the national team here in the UAE, been involved with domestic football and international national team football in Pakistan. And I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like the potential that sits in that country. Like, these players and these girls and these women are competing. And I'm not even going to, these athletes are competing at the international level without having any football, any consistent football, any domestic football. Like, I'm telling you, the potential that sits there in that country is so scary. Like, I'm scared for when these girls and these athletes get access to full-time football and when they get access to a professional setup, because it's going to be that desire alone, right? Because for me, for example, when I was in the US, I took going to training for granted. My mother had to drag me out of the house sometimes to go to training, because I took it for granted, right? So when you couple their experiences of being deprived of football and high level competition for so long, partner that with a healthy competitive environment to where they are able to play consistently, you're going to create a very, very deadly athlete. And I'm telling you, I remember in 2018 when I went there for the first time, I was shocked. Completely shocked. I was like, you're telling me these girls have never had access to professional coaching, a professional system? No, shocked. So again, like it leaves me speechless because I literally can, the only thing I can say is I genuinely have not seen anything like it.
I want to talk now about the Emirates. You said you've been living in the UAE now for a number of years, playing domestically there as well. I spoke about this a week or so ago with former Lebanese international Asil Tufali as well, that women's football in that part of the world, in the Gulf, in the Middle East, has been horribly neglected for so long, and there's multiple reasons that might be the case. But being involved there more intimately, more closely, can you just give us a feel for what the reality is on the ground for women's football in the Emirates at the moment?
Yeah, so to be honest, what people don't realize is, the UAE national team are actually a very, very strong team, right? I think their ranking for women's is approximately 113 or something. Or again, they're in the top 120, but that's again, I think with women's football, when you venture out of the top 10, and we're seeing it in the World Cup, world rankings at some point don't matter, right? They play a role, but again, again, I feel I have my own opinion about that. It's a different story. But again, what they are able to display and how like the talent here, it's unreal, right? You have actual like real athletes performing and training at a high level. That's the international team, the national team. And then you have, as far as the domestic circuit goes, so they do have an actual women's semi-pro to pro team. And the reason why I couple the both together is because, similar to a lot of leagues in the world, you have some teams that are full professional where players are sponsored, there's visas, there's accommodation, there's salaries. And then you have the semi-pro teams where there isn't that, right? Where they're not being paid to play, etc. Some teams then you have that are actually you're paying to play. So again, it's a very diverse concept, but also the UAE is very unique, right? Because you have a very large expat population, and then you have a very small local or Emirati population. So it's being able to kind of merge these two worlds together. Because also keep in mind, a lot of these expats and stuff, they don't hold Emirati nationality. All of us are on resident visas, right? We're on visas during our stay here. So, being able to kind of bridge these two worlds together is something that, the UAE Federation is working on. And, they are, the most important part is, I think for the past 3 or 4 years, there has been a consistent 11-a-side league. Now, obviously, again, similar to Pakistan and other emerging nations within football, can it be done better? Of course. Are there improvements every year and every season? Absolutely. Now, I think what's happening is now, like kind of with FIFA coming down on certain requirements of federations and of clubs to make sure that there is a certain level or certain quota of investment into the women's game. I think this is something that's pushing a lot of federations and club teams to really take notice and to take things seriously. Otherwise, you might not get your club license renewed. So again, I think there is always room for improvement. But what I really do appreciate is that, again, the talent is there. Like the standard that we have here in the UAE, not the highest, but again, there is some really good football here because you mix the Emiratis who have been playing a lot of international football in the past with expats that are coming over from the UK, that are coming over from Europe, from North America, etc., that grew up in these football pathways. Right. So you kind of couple that with the players that have the international experience with the national team. And again, it makes for a good pot.
I kind of alluded to this in my previous question, but there's cultural reasons as to to why perhaps women's football has been neglected for so long in that part of the world. As I said, I spoke to former Lebanese international Asil Tufali as well, and she was of the view that it has been that there has been sort of some progress in that women's football has now been sort of largely accepted by society, still under-resourced, underdeveloped, but has generally been accepted by society at large. Do you see it the same way? Have you had sort of the same experience where you've seen that women's football, despite the fact that it is still, as we said, underdeveloped and under-resourced, but you still feel like it has been generally accepted? Do you share that same view?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can tell by the brands, the big multinational brands that are coming to the table in the Middle East, right? So you have a lot of brands that are looking for, female athletes. And again, if we remove football, right? Just athletes, female athletes in general, especially here in the Middle East, you have a lot of brands that have their regional offices for Middle East here in Dubai, and in the UAE, that are really looking at targeting MENA, GCC, South Asia, Southeast Asia, etc. And for me, that just speaks volumes of the noise and the waves that female athletes are making in today's world in the Middle East, and in these Muslim countries, which is amazing. And what's great is that it's the athletes are getting to be themselves. If you choose to wear leggings under your shorts, if you choose to wear a hijab to cover your head, if you wear to choose full sleeves for a more modest look because that's what you believe, that's what's really nice to see, because the brands are not coming. So for example, like I wear tights under my shorts, and I work really closely with Puma. Puma have never come to me in any of the shoots that we've done for their social media or for any of their advertising and saying, hey, can you reconsider not wearing, like, never once, right? So there is that acceptance of the athlete getting to choose who they want to be, how they want to be, how they want to portray their image, which is really nice. Now, obviously within society, you're going to get people that are super supportive and you're going to get people that have differing opinions, right? That's always going to be there. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. But as much as we can continue to kind of just shift that perception of where you can still maintain your religious values, you can still maintain your cultural beliefs while still being an athlete, I think it's these kind of stereotypes that really do need to be broken, and starting, and again, like I said, the needle is starting to shift, which is really nice to see.
Um, that segues me on perfectly to my final question. Looking at what's happening here now at the Women's World Cup, when you look at what's happening with Morocco and their success, remarkable to make it through to the round of 16 at their first time of trying. They'll play here against France in a few days' time. How much, and particularly you look at someone like Nohalia Benzina, the first hijabi to play at the Women's World Cup, and the whole sort of symbolism and importance of that and her role. How important is their success and her success, and how transformative can it be for women's football across the Middle East region to sort of see that representation here on the global stage? How important is that, do you think, for the future of women's football in the Middle East?
Oh, it's so funny you say that, because I was literally just watching the game and I was seeing the hijab, I was seeing the leggings, and I was like, I hope she knows how powerful, like, that is, right? Because you're going to get so many girls, and so even women and fathers and uncles and brothers and grandpa, like, seeing that this player is so powerful, so holding down the back line, and that center back position against some of the best strikers in the world, and yet she's still staying true to herself and to her religious beliefs and her religious values. And I think it's such a big statement, and I think it brings such positive awareness to the Middle East and Muslim countries that people might not have had, right? And the World Cup is allowing this platform and is allowing players to have this stage to be able to showcase more than just playing. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this World Cup is you have emerging nations, and again, not even just the Asian countries, right? Like you have, the African countries that are doing their tribal, singing and their tribal dances to, show unity, right? And you get to see so many different cultures showing unity in their own authentic way. And I think this is why I think football is so beautiful, is because it brings people together from so many different backgrounds, so many different cultures, and it allows some people who speak so many different languages to speak the same language, which is so nice. So no, I think what's happening with Morocco, being the first Muslim country for women's football, to make it to knockout stages, like it's the start of a new era in women's football, for sure.
The first, but certainly and hopefully not the last. Maria, that's where we have to leave things for today. Thank you very much for joining us. Excited to see your progress and that of Pakistan's women's team as well over the next couple of years. I'm sure there's a lot of challenges and excitement ahead for both you and the team. But thanks so much for joining us here on the Asian Game.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And a big thanks to Maria for all of her time. Fascinating insight into her journey, as I said, from Denver through to captaining the Pakistan women's national team. And we certainly hope that her and the rest of the team have every success as they look to get that program back up and firing. But that is where we will leave things for today. Speaking of up and firing, we certainly hope that the Matildas are that tomorrow night when they take on Denmark. We'll be back tomorrow for a full recap of that game, in which we hope that a second Asian nation will make it through to the final eight. But that's all to be played for tonight. That's where we will leave things. Until I speak to you then, it's bye for now.